Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Day 4, so I'm not as fresh as I was the previous days. I looked at myself this morning and was like, yeah, was good yesterday. We had a bit of rain, but I still enjoyed it. It's nice. At some point, I took my food out, and that was during the rain, and I looked around and I saw there were other fools. And I said to the people on my table, I bet all the people around us are Northern Europeans. Yeah, that was right? Whenever we can sit outside, we do sit outside, and the Southern Europeans were inside, keeping warm. But I think it was pretty cool. I heard quite a big group of you, and I miss that. I feel like I'm getting older. Quite a big group of you went to Hanneke's Boom, and the old timers know that place because I think on DevDays 2 or 3 we had been there before and stayed for a long night. So it's always a pleasure to welcome those who are here at 8:30. So I'd say a big round of applause for yourself. Woohoo! We are the hardcore. We are here, right? So I have like every morning, a few logistic messages before we kick it off with these beautiful people on my left-hand side. Today is the day of the stroopwafel. I know you've all been waiting for that. So fresh stroopwafels today. Enjoy them. And while you are enjoying your stroopwafel, please write something in the book for Rien that is still at reception. This is also a reminder to myself, by the way. I know it's hard, but write something for this guy. We're going to hand it out to him this afternoon, so that's a real deadline. Otherwise, today there is I forgot to write down the time, still a meet and greet with Talat Upal, yesterday's speaker. So normally we do that on the day itself as well, but so you get another chance today to have questions and speak with Talat Upal, yesterday's keynote speaker. So look it up in your Hoeva. We will meet behind this. I've learned it is a yellow car, but with the blue lights here, it looks like it's pink, but a yellow car. And then it's a busy program today still, although it's the last day, and especially around lunch. So let me take you through that, because while we are having lunch, or we're queuing, or we're eating, there will be the speed talks. There have been enough of you brave enough to put your name on that list next to the reception, and so there will be speed talks in the Mohammed. So not here, so you actually have to take your plate and get to the Mohammed in the back of the room there. So just be aware that the speed talks are in the Mohammed. That's better, I guess, to be able to listen to them. So that's nice. And then immediately afterwards, and that's after lunch, we have the impact showcase about real use and the effect on people that FHIR is having in the world, followed by a keynote on sharing data in an AI-driven world. Is sharing data still valuable in an AI-driven world? And that's all after lunch. So bam, 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 bam. So be prepared. And then, of course, today we close a little bit earlier. So at 3:30, we'll have a keynote about using and sharing data in mental health, followed by our traditional, I'd say by now, closing of the conference by Graham Grieve, followed by drinks, and a little surprise actually. We're going to try to make some FHIR-related music for you as well. So that's all for a lot for today. So there's only one thing left to do for me, and that is to announce this panel here on my left-hand side. And I feel I have a special relationship with this subject because as I was, of course, one of the first people to be able to preach FHIR around the world. Many times when I was in countries for the first time, people around there ask me, "Okay, so if we want to start using FHIR on a national scale here, what kind of profiles do we need to make? Do we need to layer them? Do we need to coordinate them with someone?" And I always had to say, and this was like 215, 218, 220, there's not that much experience. But today we have, I think almost world's leading experts here on my left-hand side on making national profiles. So I'm really excited to have so much experience here, and I'm definitely going to learn something about how we actually deal with making national profiles. So I'd say, kick it off. Thanks. And give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Ivo. Yeah, welcome everyone to our panel. We are absolutely excited to have such a large crowd. We try to keep our expectations low with the Friday morning slot, but it's really amazing. So it seems to be a topic that is interesting to a lot of people. So I would suggest we start with a round of introductions and then we talk about what core profiles actually are. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning everyone. Giorgio Cangeli, I'm technical lead of HL7 Europe.
I'm Simone Heckmann. I'm with HL7 Germany. I'm the chair of the technical committee, and we are the one country in this row that doesn't have national core profiles.
Okay, good morning everyone. I'm Ardon Toonstra with FHIR, and I've been helping our customers with profiling and also in the Netherlands been co-developing the NL Core Profiles.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Abril from CSIRO, which is Australia's National Science Agency. I lead the Sparked Accelerator within Australia, and I also sit on the board of HL7AU, and I am the non-technical one up here, and I'm really focused around community building.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Liu. I work for Canada Health Infoway, which is a federal agency working on connected care and interoperability. I lead the architecture and product development team at Infoway. Some of our major products like patient summary, e-referral, and CA Core. I'm also involved with IHE International because Canada Health Infoway is a benefactor of IHE International. Happy to be here.
Yeah, as I mentioned, in Germany we don't have core profiles, and we're actually at the point where we believe that we should have core profiles, which is why we started to look at other countries and how they approach the topic. And the more we looked, the more we realized how different the concept of core profile actually manifests in multiple countries. So the first question that I would like to discuss is, what is the actual definition of a core profile? Is there a consensus among all countries and all developers beyond the fact that the end product is going to be named ISO country code -core? So let's take rounds again and talk a little bit about what your idea is of what core profiles are or should be.
Okay, so I'm in a different situation with respect to the other because as HL7 Europe, we need to consider what is happening to the different country. And we discover in the conversation that we have in working that basic core profile in HL7 Europe has been that this concept is really different from the different countries. There are some that consider the profile as sort of low constraint profile that can be reused in any case for any kind of scope, other that consider a sort of really minimum set that need to be used, for example, for accessing data for patient, and other approach. And this has been a long discussion. Some people that participate also here can say, oh, you are wrong in what you are saying, but at the end, we ends up with try to split a little bit the concept following what you did in Australia and say, okay, let's figure out what are the very low constraint profile that should be used for any case, just to capture what are some requirements that you may have. And this is the way you can represent in order that people try not to invent different way to do it. And then we define core profile that are those usage agnostic profile that should be reused in the different contexts. Mainly, we'll focus on the 5 priority categories that are foreseen by the EL data space regulation, but without pretending that has to be used for any possible purpose. And these are our core profile. Obviously, in the core profile, we are looking to keep some consistency with the IPS profile, because obviously the patient summary is one also of the case that we are looking at.
Okay, nice. So in the Netherlands, we have very detailed healthcare information models, and our core profiles explain how to map those information elements to FHIR. They're still also very open of nature and also use case agnostic, so they can be reused in different interoperability standards. So it's like an open base layer to be reused, and also to make sure that you have a consistency layer.
As Giorgio said, in Australia, it's the minimum set of requirements, it's use case agnostic, but that foundational set, that minimum core set, and similarly we've aligned it to IPS as we've started building it, and it's also very closely aligned to the work that we're doing around AUCDI, where we're defining what is that core of the core information from a clinical point of view. So that reusable, that base foundation of which we'll start to lay our use cases on top of.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time thinking and discussing about, what is a core and what is a base. And one of the feedback we got from stakeholders, like, hopefully it doesn't become the lowest common denominator, right? So we have to balance the value and consensus. So I guess it's important to define what I call the admission criteria, right? So we started with patient summary and e-referral. So those are the prioritized use cases. The goal we're looking for is for the vendors and implementers. If they implemented this prioritized, content profiles and behaviors, hopefully out of the box, with minimal configuration, they can meet the requirement of multiple use cases, right? So that's our approach.
Since we don't have core profiles, I can't give a German perspective on that, but what we do have is base profiles. And our base profiles are basically a collection of stuff that we saw happening in Germany. Like, I sometimes call it like an FAQ for German FHIR users. Right? There's always the same questions coming up, like how do I represent this or that identifier? And so it's basically a collection of mostly data type profiles where we have like these tiny bits of information that pop up again and again all over the place, but it's not really something that gives like this common denominator saying this is what we want to share, this is the core that we want to have. And we talked a little bit in our preparation for this panel about the problems for the industry to wrap their heads around the concept of use case agnostic profiles. Like they look at this and the question is always, what am I supposed to do with that? And yeah, we've seen that too in a different context, that it's really difficult to communicate. And I personally like to think about core profiles as not being a guide for implementers, but instead being a guide for specifiers in that jurisdiction, as saying, this is the basis you have to work on. This is what we've agreed upon. And if you want to deviate from that, you have to have some really good reasons, unless you should reuse as much as possible. And I think that maybe helps a little bit in the discussion to make implementers aware that this is not necessarily directly for them, but instead for the other implementers that create the implementation guides on top of the national core profiles. The next question I would like to ask is, what's driving core profiles? Is it, in your particular case, is it legislation that basically kicked it off? Is it a community effort? And how do you estimate the importance of community versus regulation in your specific countries or cases?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
start.
Okay, let's keep on.
Let's keep the order.
So when we started working on the idea of this, let's say, common profile, let's go in that way, okay, core or base, it was started as input from the community, but the world didn't move forward very quickly and was there as an open work. Then, with the regulation, we have to consider, and we have that as a main driver now for having this out. And the reason why we have now emballot this guide with the base and core profile. And these also give us the requirement. So we are focusing as HSM Europe to realize what are the requirements that has been agreed by the different member states for the European people coming from the EL network guideline and now from the XTHR logical model. And these are our main reference for developing the core profile.
Okay, so I think in the Netherlands there were a couple of initiatives that were really the drivers for creating FHIR profiles to exchange the healthcare information models in the Netherlands. For example, the MedMij program that wants to enable patients to get their data. Afterwards, there were like really incentives and subsidiary arrangements to get vendors to actually implement the standards. And now we're in a phase that those financial incentives are like closing down, and really the stick comes into play. And we're having the Weges, I think on Wednesday we had one of the key talks also talk about that we have some Dutch law coming into effect. And of course, the European health data space, where a lot of vendors look towards, like also something that's going to happen to drive the further adoption.
We are a completely community-driven approach in Australia. There is no national legislation or regulations in place yet. So the program was kicked off though and funded by the Federal Department of Health. So there is federal government direction that this is the way to go, and funded the Sparked program to bring the community together. And within Australia, both our jurisdictions, clinical colleges, and our industry, we kind of took this as the opportunity to have a completely bottom-up, open, transparent approach. So it was probably the first time in Australia there was something that was so, from the get-go, this had to be open, this had to be transparent. We'd never had anything done like that before, where everyone could come and join. So it is a very much bottom-up, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people, kind of part of the community. But importantly, the government is at the table. The government is kind of guiding the direction, and there is a hint that regulation will come. So, you know, I think having this kind of bottom-up as well as top-down direction, everyone in it together, and from the government point of view, by being part of that community process, it's kind of informing what the regulations should be, what should be those conformance requirements, what should be set as mandates within Australia. So it's a slightly different approach.
Yeah, we don't have a federal regulation yet. I think you know, the past federal government had a bill tabled, but there was an election earlier in the year, so we'll have to see what happens. But there is, but InfoWay as a federal agency funded by the federal government, the role is a convener, right, to work with the community and stakeholders. There was a published interoperability roadmap. You can Google it online. It's a 100-page PDF. But essentially, you know, the strategic goal was identified, you know, unblock data, data portability, patient access, provider access, coordination of care. So in terms of the motivation for CA Core, we started this journey about 1.5 years ago. The first CA Core release had a handful of profiles, the usual suspects, right? Patient, practitioner role, organizations. And then, you know, we did patient summary, we did e-referral, and also we've been working on a Smart on FHIR based framework. We call it Halo. So with that framework, really there was a lot of vendor and, you know, we call them PTs, provinces and territories. There's a lot of feedback on consistency of the FHIR exchange, right? Content profiles and also the API behaviors. So we, you know, feel there's a need to accelerate it. So we did a project called Harmonization with PT and vendor engagement. And you know, it's a hard work. It's a lot of work. Number of specifications we'll look at. But you know, because of the motivation and commitment from the stakeholders, we're able to release the CA Core Release 1, which have over 30 profiles. So I think it's bottom up and top down. Yeah.
But I realized working with the base profiles, which is a purely community-based approach in Germany, is that on the one hand, it worked insofar that whatever was agreed upon in the base profiles has usually been picked up by other specifiers, even without any regulatory mandate. But the problem that we are facing is that if it's community-driven, it means it's mostly work of volunteers. And with regulation usually comes funding. And what I realize is that the maintenance of base or even core profiles is really a huge task. And it's too much to shoulder by a small group of volunteers. It needs constant maintenance, constant people who take care of it, who develop tools and an ecosystem around it. So I really admire the fact that you have the best of both worlds, basically. That you, on one hand, you have the community, but also the funding. I think that's
it couldn't have happened, and it wouldn't.
a wonderful
There'd been
place
a
to
lot
be.
of work within Australia, within the community before that, and there had been work done around FHIR, but it really did need that government investment, and so we wouldn't have moved as quickly as we have if we didn't have the Federal Health Department funding the Spark program, where there is a core team to work. We also then support HL7AU to make sure there's infrastructure in place to support it. But it is part of that journey because, and reminding people that standards, they're not just for Christmas. You do need to maintain them. You need to look after them. This isn't just a short-term project. So I think that's how do we make this sustainable? And the community effort is huge, and also recognising that. So I think we've calculated about 21,000 hours in the last 18 months of our experts across Australia who've input into the development of both the AU Core, AUE requesting and AU patient summary. So even when you have that core investment in the centre to do a lot of the kind of the arms and legs, it still relies on that massive community effort and recognising that massive community effort to maintain these specs.
What do you each find the most challenging about core profiles? Is it funding? Is it the quality control? Is it finding the appropriate terminologies? What is, for you, what do you personally find the toughest part about your work?
The most difficult thing that's been at the beginning to understand what the core should be for. So to understand which level of granularity, which level of abstraction we need to obtain. What I see as main challenges for the next future is how to keep the core profile inside the entire ecosystem of IG. Because we need to consider a different dimension. We have the jurisdictional dimension. We have global, in our case, European, national, and potential other sub-regional area. And on the other side, you have the use case specific IG that may also follow the same kind of layering. And all these things interact with each other, and then you are coming up with the question of, okay, I need to define my lab report or my use case specific thing for my nation, and I need to consider the different layer in the core part, and then the different layer on the other, and how to keep all these things consistent, and what I need to refer, how to manage all this kind of dependency. And I think this might be a challenge, and it could be interesting to have some answer or better direction on that topic.
Yeah.
So I think for the Netherlands, I can relate to that, and also the discussion is where are those profiles exactly meant for? That is also a thing. And besides that, like those healthcare information models that are the backbone of those core profiles, they are like a bless because they provide us exactly with what we should profile. So they have a very nice scope. But they're also a bit of a curse because they were developed before FHIR or at the same time with FHIR for really the Dutch market or the Dutch healthcare processes. And to map those to like an international standard is sometimes very tricky and hard and takes a lot of time. So it's not finished yet, all the profiles. So that's also challenging.
Yeah.
It isn't a complete set.
Yeah, I think that's probably been one of the blessings that we have had, that we kicked off our work around the clinical models and our engagement with the clinicians at the same time. And so probably some of those challenges, and it still causes lots of discussions and debates, but we were able to establish a clinical data design group and a technical data design group at the same time. So we're building out our AU clinical data for interoperability at the same time as we're building out our AU cores. But that does lead to some of those challenges, what sits within core and what sits within those more use case specific IGs, and how do we keep that balance between the clinical needs and what's technically feasible. So that's probably been part of where our challenge is, more bringing and harmonising and making sure that we're meeting the needs of both the clinical community and from a technical implementation point of view.
Yeah, I think, it's a huge upfront investment, and also, to maintain value going forward, right? I think that requires commitment, governance, and I don't know if discipline is the word, right? Because sometimes it's just convenient to go your own way, right? Define my IG and put my requirements over there. But I think for CA Core to maintain its value, right, we really need the stakeholders to stay committed, right? From the vendor perspective, they keep expressing their design of, having the common reusable profiles, and from the jurisdictions or who are the custodians of the requirements and IGs, they should stay committed and have that discipline of if it's reusable, if it's generic, and let's go through the process of putting it in the core. Sometimes it may not be as convenient as do your local IGs, but I think for the common good, we should be doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. So to end on a positive note, I would like to finish off with a round of what your greatest successes have been so far with National Profiles. Like, what are the wins that you've had or that you try to achieve or that you're hoping for in the future?
I mean, okay, I think that the great success with the core profile has been, in my opinion, the fact that we have been able to engage the different European affiliates in contributing to that. And so to really share the experience and to enable also this kind of sharing of knowledge among the different affiliates. I think this is the biggest added value beside the technical result that we can obtain with the IG that we are working on.
And so for the Netherlands, I heard that reusability, I think that's really a win, because I know vendors that implemented the healthcare information models and the FHIR profiles for some kind of subsidiary program, and at some point it didn't end up in production, and then half a year later another project came up that reuses the same healthcare information model and profiles, and that vendor was able to just reuse what they already built, but then for like a completely different use case. So I think that's a big win for reusability if you have those in core profiles.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think what's been great, and we've got our next Connect-a-thon is in September, is actually being able to, at the Connect-a-thon, see 100, 120 plus people who can fit in the room, starting not only testing around AU Core, but with our Smart Track, actually showing how they're building apps and forms that are leveraging AU Core. So I think you mentioned that earlier, Andrew. Being able to show and demonstrate value really early, not just from industry, but from the clinicians who come along, can start to see tools, different apps, different forms, and you all met Talat yesterday, delivering immediate value to them as well. And I think that's what's been really successful, is driving that immediate return of value, not just back to the vendor, but back to the clinician, most importantly.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the quality of the pan-Canadian specifications, it's a FHIR event, so I have to bring up Simplifier, right? So, once we're starting to build that IG hierarchy, right? Have the CA Core and PSCA, e-referral, or derived from the CA Core, and with the tooling capabilities of enforcing and quality checking, right? So hopefully we have the IGs or specifications that have better quality and consistency for the vendors, for sure. Right? Canada is a large country, not in terms of population, but in terms of territories, and the health IT market, vendor market is somewhat fragmented, smaller vendors. When they do business across the country, it's a huge cost. If the requirements are different, the patient profile looks different, terminology looks different, and they have to spend a lot of money and cost and resources on it, right? So I think that's why they are at the table, and we should deliver that to meet their expectations. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're unfortunately out of time. I wish we had room for a little Q&A, but we're going to stick around, and we'll have plenty of break time with Strobe Waffle, so approach any one of us if you would like to continue the discussion about core profiles. Thank you very much. And thank you.